Some connections are not erased by time, undone by distance, or broken by silence. When love is genuine, it transcends logic and exceeds material boundaries, revealing itself as a bond that unites souls on a deep, invisible level. In this video, we will explore the mysterious link between two souls that, even when moving in opposite directions, continue to dance at the same frequency. Have you ever felt that despite everything, someone still lives within you? That sense of an unseen presence, a communion beyond physical touch, can be much more than an illusion. It may be the expression of an authentic love rooted in the very essence of being. Get ready to dive into a journey where Jung meets true love, uncovering what happens when two souls recognize each other beyond the surface. If you believe that true bonds never break, comment, "I feel this true connection." In Carl Jung's analytical psychology, encounters between people that seem to touch the depths of the soul are not mere coincidences. They are archetypal experiences that awaken unconscious material and reveal hidden aspects of our own being. When two people connect in a way that withstands time, absence, and even silence, what is at stake is not only affection or memory, but a psychic dynamic that goes beyond the ego. Jung taught that we project onto others the parts of ourselves that we have not yet integrated. These hidden fragments appear as the figures of the shadow, the anima and the animus, representing respectively the denied aspects of personality, the feminine in a man and the masculine in a woman. By recognizing these projected aspects, we begin to see the other with greater clarity, authenticity, and depth. Meaningful relationships act like mirrors. By attracting and confronting us, they push us toward individuation, the journey of the self toward wholeness. Along this path, we are invited to integrate what lies in the unconscious and to transcend the idealizations we hold about ourselves and others. Some connections do more than reveal us. They transform us. They endure because they point to something larger than personal will. They spring from the collective unconscious, where symbols and meanings intertwine beyond reason. Their persistence does not depend on physical presence, but on an essential affinity between two inner worlds that recognized each other even before their first meeting. From a Jungian perspective, the most significant encounters in our lives are never accidental. When two people cross paths in an intense transformative way, something far greater than conscious intention is at work. This kind of meeting activates contents of the collective unconscious, a psychic layer shared by all humanity that houses archetypes, the primordial forms of experience. These archetypes shape how we feel, relate, and seek meaning. Among the most powerful archetypes is the sacred pair, the union of opposites symbolizing wholeness. When two people feel a deep immediate connection, as if they have known each other for ages, they may be experiencing this archetype in action. What they recognize is not the other's personality, but an inner mirror. Something in that person resonates with something intimate and essential within themselves. This profound recognition often brings a sense of destiny, as if the bond were written, inevitable. Jung called such meaningful coincidences synchronicities, events that cannot be explained by causal logic, yet carry deep symbolic significance. A meeting between two souls who recognize each other in this way is no random event. It is a psychic activation point, an invitation for both to dive deeper into their journey of self-discovery. When two people meet under this archetypal atmosphere, the energy generated is not merely emotional, but symbolic. Everything around them seems more intense. Time feels suspended. Gestures and words carry hidden meanings, and even silences speak volumes. The encounter becomes a gateway that awakens, heals, challenges, and transforms. The relationship itself turns into a living symbol that transcends individuality, expressing a universal drama of seeking, meeting, and revealing. In these cases, encounters matter not just for their emotional impact, but for what they trigger within us. The other person functions as a catalyst for contents that lay dormant in the unconscious. Memories, dreams, forgotten desires, and unresolved pain surface. This can be confusing and even painful, but it is precisely this process that gives the encounter its significance. It opens pathways to transformation. Archetypal recognition also involves a certain loss of control. The rational mind tries to understand, label, and explain. But there is something about this bond that defies definition. It operates not only at the level of consciousness, but mainly in the deeper layers of the psyche. When we attempt to force such an encounter into conventional molds, we risk suffocating the mystery that gives it life. For this reason, these relationships often do not follow traditional scripts. They may be intense and brief, enduring yet silent, intermittent yet persistent. Linear time does not determine their validity. The depth of the experience reveals their importance. Physical separations, emotional distance, or even the absence of communication may occur. And yet, the bond remains active in both psyches. Experiencing an archetypal encounter is both a gift and a task. It exists not to be completed, but to be understood. When we open ourselves to this kind of relationship, we are invited to go beyond the ego, to question our certainties, and to abandon easy projections. It takes courage to let the other reveal not only what is beautiful in us, but also what we have avoided seeing. At its core, this kind of connection leads us toward wholeness. It is not about finding a missing half, but about accessing a part of ourselves that can only be touched through the reflection of another. It is as if the encounter were a symbolic mirror in which we see not only the other person but also our own soul stripped of masks, recognized in its essence, and challenged to grow. In the most intense and enigmatic relationships, we often experience feelings that seem to arise for no apparent reason. Strong idealization, disproportionate anger, immediate enchantment, or a deep sense of familiarity with someone we have just met. In Jung's view, these emotions do not come from nowhere. They are often expressions of projections we cast onto the other, unconscious contents we do not recognize in ourselves, and so place symbolically in the person before us. Projection is a psychic mechanism that operates silently. Everything we reject or fail to acknowledge in ourselves, whether negative traits like anger, envy, or fear, or repressed talents and light, tends to be seen outside in the other. The other becomes a canvas on which we paint parts of ourselves that remain unrecognized. In deep relationships, this happens with enormous intensity. The beloved person in this context becomes a living symbol loaded with meanings that often say more about us than about them. One of Jung's most fundamental concepts for understanding this process is the shadow. The shadow encompasses all that the ego does not recognize as part of itself, not only negative traits but also talents, sensitivities, and inner light that have been suppressed over time. When the shadow finds a projection outlet, it is poured onto the other, creating both fascination and rejection. That is why certain people attract or repel us so strongly. They reflect something hidden in our own psyche. In relationships filled with projections, we construct an idealized image of the other, a character that meets our expectations, needs, or fantasies. However, as time goes by and we live with the other person, this image begins to crumble. The real person emerges, bringing disappointment or conflict. This moment, though critical, is also necessary. Disillusionment is an opportunity. The moment when projection dissolves and we can finally see the other as they truly are and ourselves with greater clarity. This process can be painful. Seeing our projections forces us to confront internal aspects we have avoided. Yet it is precisely this confrontation that initiates true transformation. When we remove the layers of projection, we can begin an authentic relationship, one not based on fantasy, but on mutual recognition. The connection ceases to be a theater of expectations and becomes a space of growth and truth. Beyond the shadow, another central axis in relational projections is the anima and the animus, the unconscious feminine in a man and the unconscious masculine in a woman. These archetypes, when not integrated, are often projected onto romantic partners, leading to overwhelming loves, extreme idealizations, and identity crises. Seeing the perfect man or the ideal woman in the other is often seeing our own repressed inner aspect. Integrating these contents demands courage. The other person stops being responsible for completing us and becomes someone with whom we share a journey. We learn that mature love does not demand perfection but awareness. Instead of expecting the other to provide what we lack, we learn to look within and take responsibility for our own wholeness. This maturation does not eliminate the intensity of the bond. On the contrary, it deepens it. When we move beyond projection, we can love the other as they are with their lights and shadows. Even more, we learn to love ourselves because we recognize that what we saw externally was partly a reflection of what lay dormant within us. True relationships are living laboratories of the soul. They are settings where our forgotten parts gain voice, where our wounds emerge, and where, if we are willing, we can transform. Awareness of projection is the first step in turning the bond from an illusion into a genuine meeting between two whole beings who see, confront, and embrace each other exactly as they are. In Carl Jung's analytical psychology, every human carries a psychic polarity. A man harbors a feminine image called the Anima, and a woman holds an unconscious masculine aspect, the animus. These figures are not mere reflections of the opposite sex, but symbolic representations of internal qualities and forces that must be recognized and integrated for the individual to reach wholeness. Integrating the anima and the animus is essential to individuation, the journey towards psychic completeness. These archetypes serve as bridges between consciousness and the unconscious. When unrecognized, they tend to be projected onto others, especially romantic partners. This explains why in many relationships we feel an almost mystical attraction, as if the other embodied something we lack. In a sense, that is exactly what happens. We project onto the other our own inner energy that has not yet been assimilated. The anima in a man represents qualities such as sensitivity, intuition, receptivity, and emotional depth. When this internal image remains unworked, a man may unconsciously seek women who embody these traits without realizing that he should cultivate them within himself. Similarly, the animus in a woman symbolizes rationality, firmness, initiative, and direction. When not integrated, it may lead her to seek male figures who express this strength, believing that only through another can she feel complete or secure. This external search can produce intense but unstable relationships. No real person can sustain the projection of an archetype indefinitely. As living together reveals the other's humanity, their flaws, limitations, and individuality, the idealized image begins to fragment. This is a crucial point in any relationship. Either there is a painful break or an opportunity for a more conscious reunion where the bond transforms into fertile ground for mutual growth. The dance between anima and animus also plays out internally as a constant dialogue between reason and emotion, action and contemplation, strength and surrender. When these aspects are out of balance, the individual tends towards psychic rigidity, repeating patterns, or feeling empty. Integrating opposites means reconciling these internal voices and allowing them to coexist harmoniously. Integration does not happen quickly or linearly. It requires facing one's own shadow, recognizing projections, and a willingness to look inward. Often, it is precisely through challenging relationships where we face extreme feelings, deep doubts, and existential crises that the anima and animus emerge more clearly. These relationships act as symbolic mirrors that reveal not only the other, but also what pulses in our unconscious. Along this path, what was once a sense of lack transforms into strength. A man who integrates his anima becomes more sensitive, empathetic, and emotionally deep. A woman who embraces her animus gains confidence, clarity, and the capacity for action. Both become more whole and thus more capable of forming true bonds, not based on idealized projections, but on conscious choice. In practice, this integration shows up as the ability to trust intuition without abandoning reason, to act firmly without losing tenderness, to relate to another without self-annihilation. When anima and animus dance in balance within us, we stop looking outside for what we have begun to cultivate inside. Paradoxically, it is precisely when this inner completeness grows that our external relationships become healthier, freer, and more lasting. This journey does not eliminate the mystery of human encounters. On the contrary, it deepens it. By recognizing that the other is a mirror rather than a substitute for what lives within us, we learn to love with presence, awareness, and truth. Love ceases to be an escape from incompleteness and becomes a celebration of the meeting between two beings walking together toward their own wholeness. In Jungian psychology, individuation is the process through which the individual becomes who they truly are by integrating conscious and unconscious contents of the psyche. This path is not solitary, even though it is deeply inner. Often it is awakened, challenged, or catalyzed by relationships that touch the deepest layers of a self. Here is where the idea of permanence comes in, not as insistence, attachment, or dependence, but as the continuity of a psychic influence that transcends time and physical presence. Some human connections do not fade with the end of a relationship, with geographic distance, or with the passing of years. They remain alive within us because they belong not only to the realm of conscious experiences, but also to the unconscious, tied to symbols, archetypes, and inner movements that guide us toward transformation. These connections go beyond affection. They become true psychic landmarks, turning points, deep revelations, mirrors of self-knowledge. A relationship that fosters individuation is not necessarily the easiest, but certainly the most meaningful. It awakens in us the need to face our shadows, revisit our patterns, and make room for dormant aspects. Often it comes with pain, conflict, and ambivalence precisely because it activates what must be seen and integrated. This is the type of encounter that endures not out of convenience, but out of meaning. Permanence in this context does not mean the relationship will stay the same. Changes, transformations, and even ruptures may occur. But even if there is no longer shared time together, the symbolic mark remains as an internal reference point. Jung said that what is truly archetypal has its own force. It does not depend on the ego's will to exist. Thus, certain bonds keep pulsating in our inner world, guiding dreams, reflections, and decisions. When someone awakens us to our own soul, that experience cannot be forgotten. It becomes part of who we are. There may be no more words exchanged, yet a constant dialogue remains at the symbolic level where the other continues to occupy a sacred space in our imagination. It is not about fantasizing a reunion or clinging to the past, but recognizing that this presence was, and perhaps still is, a point of contact with something greater, our own wholeness. Permanence can also be seen as faithfulness to the lived experience. Even if the relationship has transformed, it remains significant because it was authentic. To the extent that it contributed to our individuation, it does not disappear. It evolves with us. It may become memory, inspiration, or even silence, but it stays present as a symbol. This requires emotional maturity because it means accepting that a connection's value lies not in its duration, but in the depth with which it touched our being. Furthermore, it is important to understand that certain encounters carry a transgenerational meaning. They activate ancestral memories, heal inherited wounds, and open paths to something beyond the individual. In these connections, we feel part of something larger, as if our story were woven into a broader narrative connecting us to all humanity. These bonds, by their symbolic nature, tend to remain alive even as their form changes. Individuation invites us to stop seeking in another the answer to our lack, while recognizing that the other can still be an essential mirror on this journey. When two people mutually contribute to each other's inner growth, even if their paths diverge, the connection endures because what was awakened can no longer fall asleep. The awareness gained remains as an invisible legacy of the relationship. Finally, true permanence is not that of attachment, but of meaning. What transforms us deeply endures because it inscribes itself in the soul, not just in memory. Such relationships do not need external guarantees because their reality is internal, archetypal, and symbolic. They are portals of both pain and light, of farewell and rebirth. Living signs that, even in silence, we continue on the path to becoming whole. How do we recognize these deep archetypal connections in our everyday experiences? There are several indicators that can help us identify when we're experiencing something beyond ordinary attraction or compatibility. 1. Immediate recognition, a sense of "I know you" despite having just met, as if reconnecting rather than meeting for the first time. 2. Synchronistic events, meaningful coincidences surrounding the meeting or relationship that defy logical explanation. 3. Dream activation. The person appears in your dreams in symbolic ways, often carrying messages that feel significant. 4. Emotional intensity. Feelings that seem disproportionate to the actual time spent together, whether positive or challenging. 5. Growth catalyst. The relationship consistently pushes you toward greater self-awareness, even when uncomfortable. 6. Symbolic perception. The person seems to embody or represent something greater than themselves in your inner landscape. 7. Time distortion. When together, time seems to either stand still or accelerate in unusual ways. When you recognize such a connection, how might you approach it with Jungian awareness? 1. Journal the relationship. Record dreams, emotional patterns, and synchronicities related to this person. 2. Examine projections. Ask yourself, what qualities am I projecting onto this person that might actually be mine? 3. Honor the symbolic. Recognize that the relationship has both literal and symbolic dimensions. Both are valid. 4. Embrace the challenge. Accept that archetypal connections often bring emotional turbulence as part of their transformative function. 5. Practice active imagination. Engage in dialogues with the inner representations of this person to distinguish the real individual from your projections. 6. Seek balance. Work to develop within yourself the qualities you find most compelling in the other person. 7. Allow transformation. Be open to how the relationship may change form while maintaining its essence. Some bonds transcend time, space, and logical explanation. They are encounters that reveal the soul's hidden parts, awaken consciousness, and mark the journey toward individuation. In light of Jung's analytical psychology, we see that these connections are not merely emotional, but symbolic, archetypal, and profoundly transformative. Throughout this exploration, we have examined how archetypes, projections, the shadow, the anima, and the animus unveil hidden dynamics in the background of the most intense relationships, and how even after changes or separations, certain experiences remain alive within us, nourishing our process of self-discovery. When we recognize the symbolic function of these encounters, we stop seeking surface answers and begin to welcome mystery as an essential part of life. True relationships do not complete us, they integrate us. And it is in this integration that true permanence is found. The invisible thread that connects souls is not woven of dependency or need, but of meaning and transformation. In recognizing this truth, we liberate ourselves to love more authentically, to grow more completely, and to honor the sacred dance that continues long after the music seems to have stopped playing. If this journey has touched something within you, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message.